This video was brought to you by Nebula. Today, a Russian transport plane crashes in Belgorod, Trump wins big in New Hampshire, and the Doomsday clock remains at 90 seconds to midnight. From TLDR News, this is your daily briefing for Wednesday, the 24th of January, 2024. It's been reported this morning that a Russian military transport plane crashed in the southern Russian region of Belgorod, which borders Ukraine. There have been conflicting reports about the nature of the flight and what caused it to crash. The Russian Ministry of Defense claimed that the plane was carrying 65 Ukrainian prisoners of war and 9 Russians when it was downed. Ukraine's general staff, however, said that the plane was carrying missiles for Russia's S-300 air defense system and made no mention of prisoners of war. It's not entirely clear what caused the plane to crash either, although one Russian lawmaker claimed that it was shot down by 3 missiles that the West had supplied to Ukraine. Ukrainian media, however, initially suggested that the plane may have been downed by Ukrainian forces, but these claims were soon deleted. The crash took place about 70 kilometers northeast of Belgorod at about 11 a.m. local time, with RIA Novosti, a Russian state media outlet, claiming that the prisoners were being transported for an exchange. This, though, as with many other details in the story, can't be verified. Dmitry Peskov, a spokesperson for Vladimir Putin, has claimed that the Kremlin is aware of the crash. There's more on the way, but be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to make the daily briefing part of your daily routine, or just search for us on your podcast app to listen along. Donald Trump has won the New Hampshire Republican presidential primary, the second state contest to find the party's presidential candidate. With ballots still being counted, Trump is projected to have secured an 11-point margin of victory. During his victory speech, Trump called Nikki Haley an imposter who has been beaten so badly. This comes after Trump won a landslide in Iowa's caucuses last week. But Haley says this race is far from over, and vows to fight on until the vote in her home state of South Carolina in a month. Most, however, do consider this race to be in fact over, as the upcoming Republican contests will now take place in more Trump-friendly states, making a Trump victory, and hence a Trump-Biden rematch in November, look inevitable. Moving over to the Democratic Party then. President Joe Biden won the unofficial Democratic primary in New Hampshire, despite not having appeared on the ballot. In unusual circumstances, Biden's campaign purposefully did not file his name as an act of solidarity with the Democratic National Convention's decision to make South Carolina the first state to hold a primary. Nevertheless, voters still chose to write Biden's name rather than vote for the 2 who did appear on the ballot. In scientific news today, it's been announced that the Doomsday clock is to remain at 90 seconds to midnight, which is the closest the clock has ever been to midnight. The clock symbolically shows how close the world is to human-made global catastrophe. Essentially, the closer the hands are to midnight, the closer we are to said catastrophe. It was first introduced in 1947 by the Chicago atomic scientists who helped work on the US's nuclear weapons program in the Second World War, and it's updated each year in January by members of the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists. In 1947, the clock was first set to 7 minutes to midnight. It was moved to 2 minutes to midnight in 1953 following the first US hydrogen bomb test. It was moved all the way back to 17 minutes to midnight in 1991 at the end of the Cold War. However, it has slowly crept closer to midnight since then, with it finally reaching 90 seconds to midnight in 2023. This was due to the war in Ukraine and concerns about nuclear weapons, bioweapons, and the climate. The clock is to remain at 90 seconds to midnight this year for a few reasons. Firstly, the US, China, and Russia have all agreed to spend huge sums of money on expanding or modernizing their nuclear arsenals. Second, the war in Ukraine has created a risk of nuclear escalation. Third, the lack of action on climate change. And fourth, the risks linked to the misuse of AI and biological technologies. In Germany, train drivers have today begun their longest ever rail strike, as hopes of a return to the negotiating table look unlikely. The strike began at 2 a.m. this morning and is set to last almost a week, causing serious commuter difficulties. Major train stations were completely empty this morning, while roads were chock-a-block. The strike is the latest in a series of walkouts over working hours, conditions, and pay. The train drivers' union, GDL, is calling for workers' hours to be reduced from 38 to 35 per week, without a pay reduction, and it also wants a raise of €555 per month for employees. The union rejected German rail operator Deutsche Bahn's offer of an 11% pay rise earlier this month, as well as the option to move from a 38 to 37-hour week from 2026. Union leader Klaus Wieselski has said he is ready to compromise, but Deutsche Bahn's offers didn't go far enough. The rail strikes are likely to cause further disruption as negotiations continue. During the last strikes in early January, only 20% of Germany's long-distance trains were running, according to Deutsche Bahn. And during the previous warning strikes in December, regional and S-Bahn services were also delayed or cancelled. Deutsche Bahn is now running an emergency reduced timetable and recommends that passengers check their route 24 hours in advance. Netflix experienced a surge in sign-ups at the end of last year, adding over 13.1 million subscribers in the last 3 months. This growth is a result of Netflix's crackdown on password sharing, encouraging users to create their own accounts. Despite the addition of ads, many customers opted for the cheapest plan, which accounted for 40% of new sign-ups in the 12 countries where adverts are offered, including the US and UK. Netflix plans to raise prices to reflect its investments and improvements. Netflix is also exploring live events and a $5 billion platform to bring WWE Raw to the platform. While Netflix is confident in its growth plan, it doesn't expect advertising to contribute significantly to this year's growth. Many of Netflix's rivals are making similar moves too. Amazon, for instance, is trying to boost its slate of live sports events and will start showing adverts to Prime members this month unless they pay $2.99 extra per month. Netflix reported over $33.7 billion in revenue and $5.4 billion in profits for 2023. In our final uplifting story for today, we discuss a New York City plan to wipe $2 billion in medical debt away from 500,000 residents. The city is working with the organization RIP Medical Debt, a non-profit that buys the debt from hospitals and debt collectors on the behalf of people on low incomes or who are in financial hardship. The plan was announced by Eric Adams, who claims that under the program, the city will spend about $18 million over 3 years. He claimed that this is a great investment for the city, and that if you're able to save $2 billion in debt, that $2 billion trickles down to those households who are not going to fall into our safety net. You've no doubt been following along with the news from Israel and Gaza, but if you want a better understanding and to dive deeper into the history of the region, then you should check out Real Life Law's hour-long documentary about the tensions and fighting between Israel and Gaza going back decades. It's a superb way to brush up on the history of this region, giving colour and context to what's happening right now. That video, by the way, is part of Real Life Law's Modern Conflict series, where they regularly run through major ongoing conflicts, from Lebanon's civil war to everything going on in Myanmar and the Turkish-Kurdish conflict. It's an incredible series and it's exclusively available on our streaming service, Nebula. As you likely know, Nebula is the service we built with a bunch of our creator friends, and it's home to tons of smart educational content. The best part is that by signing up, you not only get access to exclusive series like Modern Conflicts, China Actually from Polymatter, or The Logistics of X from Wendover Productions, but it also directly supports TLDR. That's because when you sign up, it contributes to the budgets of these big documentaries and helps us grow and expand our ambitions. So if you want to sign up, use the link below, because it not only supports us directly, but it also gets you a Nebula annual plan for 40% off. That's less than £2 a month, which is an incredibly good price for an independent streaming service, which not only supports creators, but also provides you with tons of ad-free and exclusive content. Thanks for your support and for backing Nebula.